It looks like we're still waiting for a couple commissioners to join. We'll get started here in a couple minutes. Hi, Lainey.
Hi, Paul. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm Commissioner Freeman's assistant. He might be running a little bit late. He's going to try and hop on, leaving a meeting onto his phone and then rushing right back to the courthouse and then coming here. So I'm just
Great.
having technical difficulties, so I'm trying to get him set up today.
Super. Thanks for the update.
Yeah, I locked him out of his computer, so I have my laptop for him to use instead.
Nice. Carol, can you tell me who all we have in attendance with commissioners? Do we have quorum yet?
Let me take a look really quickly. I see Jessica. Yep. The 4 of you who were supposed to be in attendance are all here today.
Oh, great. Super. Well, let's go ahead and get started. This is the December 4th meeting of the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. My name is Paul Solomon. I'm the chair. And I think we'll get started with a roll call, please.
All right. Chair Solomon.
Here.
Vice Chair Bovet. Commissioner Beach.
Present.
Commissioner Freeman.
I'm here and I apologize for my name being wrong on the screen.
No worries. Commissioner McPherson.
Here.
And Senator Przanski. Representative Lewis. Okay.
All right. First item on the agenda is the Clear Clinic. We're going to hear from PCC, Portland Community College's Clear Clinic, and their request for Burn JAG grant funds through the commission. And I believe we have Lainey Tupper Is it just you presenting, Lainey?
Hi, my name's Lainey Tepper. I'm the executive director of the Clear Clinic. We're actually our own 501c3 now. And Stephanie Davis, one of our paralegals, is also going to present. But I can get started if y'all are ready.
Great, let's do it.
Gerardo, am I able to share my screen to share my slides?
Yes, you should be able to see a share button right next to the leave or hang up button.
Thank you. All right, sorry for the, yes, share. Screen, window, or tab. Okay, let me make this a slideshow. Can you all see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So somehow I am not at the beginning. My apologies. So we are here from the Clear Clinic, and we're a free legal services clinic that is dedicated to breaking down legal barriers for Oregonians. And this pitch is specifically for clinics for the 9 tribes throughout Oregon and at ODOC facilities, Department of Corrections facilities outside the Portland metro area. The purpose of the Clear Clinic is to tear down legal barriers that keep our community from enjoying the benefit of each member's full participation. Our legal services include criminal record and eviction expungements, court fines and fee waivers, legal name and gender marker changes, and more. The and more is a lot more. We have a full service eviction legal defense program, a full service deportation defense program, and a few other things. But the focus of this particular presentation and budget request is on our drop-in legal services, which are those that I just mentioned. So first I want to talk a little bit about the problem, and this is not to imply that you all who are experienced, legislators and policymakers who on the Criminal Justice Commission, so you're obviously really familiar with the problem that criminal legal records can have for folks. But just briefly to kind of set the stage for why we do what we do, legal records, both criminal and eviction records, hold people back from obtaining safe and stable housing, from obtaining living wage employment, from getting career advancing education and training, and most importantly, maybe from well-being, from feeling good about themselves and being able to be successful and happy contributing members of society. And so those criminal records and even eviction records also hold both our community as a whole back and our economy back because they stop everyone from participating fully in the community. Another problem, one of the reasons why, despite Oregon's decent expungement laws, why so many people retain these lifelong criminal records and eviction records, is that legal assistance is expensive and it's hard to access. And it can be all but impossible for people to access legal services like ours, that there's sort of a fiction that they're accessible for individuals pro se, for lay people to go through the process pro se. Realistically, most people are not able to do so. In fact, many of our clients at the clinic have attempted to engage in a legal process for themselves already, whether that's expungement, criminal record expungement, eviction expungement, legal name and gender marker changes, fines and fee waivers, any of it. And they find that that's not something that they're able to do on their own, which is when they come to us. This is even more true for a couple of populations, and those are incarcerated folks, of course, because access to legal services is severely restricted, as is access to the internet and things like that. And then rural Oregonians, including tribal members. So at the beginning of my slides, there's maps of Oregon that show the DOC and tribal locations. And as you can see, those are primarily rural. And access to justice is particularly difficult for rural Oregonians. And that's also due to lack of reliable internet access and lack of access to services and more. And this is also a problem, not just because it applies to everyone equally, but because there are racial disparities in our criminal legal system, as you all know as well. At every stage of our legal system, our criminal legal system in particular, from policing to arrests to charging to sentencing and to incarceration, BIPOC and low income people are vastly overrepresented. That means that incarceration rates are much higher for people of color than for white people, and that holds true for Native Americans as well. Incarceration rates for Native Americans are 42.5% higher than the statewide rate for other Oregonians. Rural Oregonians also, like I mentioned earlier, have decreased access to justice and access to legal services, and that includes tribal members. The data shows that people in rural areas face specific hurdles to accessing justice that include the lack of legal services available in rural areas, limited infrastructure, including internet access, geographic challenges, and language access. And that fact, coupled with the fact that both our criminal and eviction legal systems disproportionately impact Native people, that means that a lot of Native folks are left with records that, without access to legal services to clear up those records, they follow them for life. So our proposed solution is free, open access, drop-in legal services. We already provide these services in the Portland metro area, and the Multnomah County District Attorney in Multnomah County alone. We also file expungements statewide, and scaling access to justice in that way, providing drop-in legal services to as many people as possible, allows us to help thousands of people instead of possibly hundreds. Unlike many other drop-in legal clinics, however, this is our full-time job. So we're not, we don't just host a one-off pop-up legal clinic and then we're gone and inaccessible. We're available to provide ongoing legal support. So people can drop back in and see us. We're at recovery centers and at Portland Community College locations across the metro area, multiple days out of the week. We have 3 to 4 drop-in clinics per week in the Portland area. So this proposal is to provide legal clinics that provide targeted services, these same services I've been talking about, to both adults in custody prior to their reentry and to Native American tribes around the state of Oregon. So first, I'll talk a little bit about barrier reducing legal services for Native tribes in rural areas. So the sort of first part of our proposal is providing free drop-in legal clinics and follow-up legal services to individuals on reservations and tribal organizations around the state of Oregon for all 9 federally recognized tribes. This will help us scale access to justice for these populations, which can allow us as a state to help repair some of the harm from the vast overrepresentation we see of Native peoples in both the criminal and eviction legal systems. And also providing court fines and fee waivers helps people avoid wage garnishment, avoid the sort of snowballing cycle of poverty, and more. The second part of our proposal is providing legal services to incarcerated people prior to re-entry. As you all may know, part of Senate Bill 397 that passed in 2021 and took effect in January 2022 was that it more clearly allowed incarcerated adults in custody in Oregon to access expungement for everything except for the case that they were currently serving time on. So based on that, the Clear Clinic has run a few pilot legal clinics in DOC facilities that have been very successful. And we would like to expand that to DOC facilities around the state. Civil legal assistance plays a critical role for people as they're leaving prison and returning to society. The data is clear that recidivism is reduced and chances for successful reintegration into the community are increased through this civil legal assistance. Securing a criminal record or eviction expungement before individuals re-enter society can make the difference in their ability to get a job or their ability to get safe housing upon release. So as opposed to waiting until someone gets out and then they're not able to get those things and then they get the legal process started to clear their record, we go in and clear their records before they exit to make that transition just a little bit smoother. The same is true of clearing up court fines and fees. It can allow for a successful fresh start financially as well. Just a few of the many impacts of the services that we provide for Oregonians are that folks are without a record, with an expunged record, are 63% more likely to get a job interview. Within about a year of record clearance, wages go up on average 22%. Eviction expungements also improve access to housing, safe and stable housing in particular, and they actually decrease the likelihood of future evictions. And reducing court fines and fees is also statistically proven to reduce recidivism and increase individuals' access to basic needs on the outside. So I'd like to go through some of sort of the proof of concept or what we've done so far. First and foremost, I just want to talk a little bit about our drop-in clinics in the Portland metro area that really show that this idea of scaling access to justice through drop-in legal services for sort of quote unquote simple legal services, it really makes a big difference. So just in our clinics in the Portland metro area since January 2024, so less than a year, we've filed 2,126 criminal record expungements for, so those are for individual people. So we have filed expungements for that many people. That doesn't mean the number of expungements. The number of expungements is exponential to that, but we've filed expungements for 2,126 people, court fines and fee waivers for 220 people, eviction expungements for 204 people, Senate Bill 819 applications for non-expungible felonies for 37 people, legal name and gender marker changes for 279 people, and provided general legal advice for another 39. Those numbers are only for our weekly clinics around the Portland metro. They don't include our Clackamas County clinics, our Washington County clinics, our rural clinics, or our Oregon Department of Corrections clinics. I would also like to highlight some clinics that are specific to this proposal. So we have done pilot projects both with in Coffee Creek, and then also at EOCI and TRCI, the Eastern Oregon Correctional Institution, and Two Rivers Correctional. Successful. And then we have also done pilot clinics with the Grand Ronde Tribe and the Confederated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation out in Pendleton, which have been successful as well. So just want to highlight some of the numbers from our Coffee Creek clinics and our Grand Ronde clinics, and then provide you some quotes from clients and staff alike, which Stephanie will take the lead on that portion of our presentation. But first, just kind of, you can see the numbers, but at Coffee Creek, we are able to serve 12 to 16 adults in custody per clinic when we go to Coffee Creek. The average cost of per individual served is $200 for our services. The average numbers of matters or cases, so individual expungements, eviction expungements, those kinds of things, are 81 per clinic. So every time we go to Coffee Creek for a 4-hour clinic, we're able to file 81 motions for the folks that we serve. And the approximate cost per case of our services is only about $40. So you really get a lot of bang for your buck. We also file an average of waiver petitions on an average of $38,088 per clinic at Coffee Creek. Now, in full disclosure, those are that's the number of dollars that we file to waive, not the number that have actually been waived, because we haven't gotten results on all of those yet. Similarly, in our clinics at Grand Ronde, we've served 157 people over 4 clinics. Those are 2-day clinics. And we serve an average of 40 people per day of our clinic. And the approximate cost per person served in Grand Ronde is $50. So again, you get pretty good bang for your buck. And then I'll turn it over to Stephanie if you're willing to read some quotes from from 2 of our paralegals who are also formerly incarcerated Oregonians, and then to read some quotes from clients who have accessed our services and from Farrell DeGarmo at the Grand Ronde Tribe.
Hi there, my name's Stephanie Davis. As Lainey said, I'm a paralegal with the Clear Clinic, and I have lived experience with the justice system. I was incarcerated in Coffee Creek for 3 years. I know firsthand the issues and the breakdown of access to justice within Oregon's prisons. I worked in the law library as a clerk my entire time there. ODOC's legal libraries are staffed by security personnel who have little to no knowledge, no legal knowledge, that is. Now that I'm on the other side of incarceration, being able to assist adults in custody who are swimming in those tumultuous legal waters is the most fulfilling work I've ever found. Clear Clinic's legal knowledge, done by compassionate attorneys and paralegals, is aiding individuals in finding that balance to justice that is sorely lacking. We also have a paralegal that works in our clinic, Troy Ramsey. He was also incarcerated for a number of years. He would like to share that legal help with court fines and fees and criminal expungements is an essential part of being successful upon release, and I believe the services should continue to be provided for guys getting ready to get out of prison, so that they can be successful upon their transition back into the community. And then I was able to get some quotes by folks that we have helped who were incarcerated and have since gotten out. Clear Clinic was instrumental in assuring that I secured a waiver to parole to Multnomah County, where I could live with my sister and continue my schooling. The release counselor I was assigned to in prison was impatient with the questions I brought to him, and some of the answers he provided were erroneous and caused unnecessary complications when my sister and I tried finding housing. Stephanie Davis at the clinic was full of useful knowledge about my rights, and I know I would have had to put my education on hold indefinitely if I had been forced to return to my home county. I am extremely grateful to the Clear Clinic for offering this invaluable service. The next quote we have says, I had several cases on my record that were eligible for expungement along with an eviction. Clear Clinic gave me so much help with resources and honestly just a place to go for legal advice that doesn't make me feel dumb for asking questions. It gives me hope and optimism that there's an organization that not only has helped me, but I personally send people to who I run into similar situations. It also gives me peace of mind and a sense of control over my future, having these advocates at the clinic. And then the last one we have is, I came to the Clear Clinic in Portland months ago, and then was able to attend the Grand Ronde Clinic in my hometown months later. These clinics have provided the help that I never would have imagined. It has made a huge positive impact on my life. You guys have helped me to successfully get 13 cases off of my record. This is unbelievable, and I never would have even thought I could get a second start. Leaving behind a troubled start to my life has brought it great job opportunities, and I'm moving to Texas with the ability to get housing and be closer to family. Plus, they have the best employees.
Thanks, Stephanie. Did you want to read the quote from Farrell too, or do you want me to?
Sure, I can do that.
Great, thanks.
My name is Farrell DeGarmo. I am a peer support specialist for the Confederate Tribes of Grand Ronde. Lainey and the Clear Clinic have blessed our community with a two 2-day expungement clinics. The first served a total of 84 people, assisting in the expungement of 243 criminal cases, providing potentially life-changing opportunities in the way of opening more doors to employment, housing, and self-worth for the people who participated. This will have a positive ripple effect on their families and communities. On their second visit, they served an astounding 91 people. We look forward to the long-standing partnership and are already seeing the effect on the mental health of our community from removing the stigmas that were once a lifelong barrier. I hope this same opportunity with Clear Clinic can spread and positively impact other communities the same way it has benefited ours.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thanks for sharing a little bit about your own story. So our budget request from you all is we're asking the CJC to fund 2 full-time positions to support our work, in particular our work to expand to serve more rural Oregonians through the 9 tribes, the 9 federally recognized tribes around Oregon, and in DOC facilities in rural Oregon. We already have a contract with DOC to provide clinics at Coffee Creek, and are hoping to be able to expand that particular contract to serve folks at other Willamette Valley institutions. So this is particularly focused on those rural DOC facilities. And we're hoping that the CJC will fund both a full-time attorney and a full-time paralegal to staff and schedule these clinics, and also to provide ongoing legal support to clients who we work with at these clinics. So you can see the budget request includes 2 individual people's salaries and fringe benefits, some travel expenses to clinics around the state, supplies, which include laptops, travel printers, fingerprint supplies, and that type of thing. And what will we do with these funds? So like I've mentioned, our plan with these particular funds is to take our pilot projects that we have had at Coffee Creek and with Grand Ronde and expand them to the rest of the state. So we'd like to provide clinics, so there's a typo there, clinics for Native tribes around the state, drop-in legal clinics for all of the 9 recognized tribes across Oregon. And when you see the sort of slash like Klamath / Cow Creek, we're thinking we can visit those multiple tribal locations trip, because they're fairly close together. And then clinics for AICs, we'd like to provide scheduled legal clinics, providing all of our services to Oregon Department of Correctional Facility, to adults in custody at ODOC facilities in rural Oregon. And that includes Deer Ridge, EOCI and TRCI, SRCI and PRCI, WCCF and SCCI. And then in addition to those, that will be a significant amount of travel for that attorney and paralegal, but we would also like to provide ongoing, or we also will provide, if funded, ongoing legal services for clinic clients. That includes Senate Bill 819 applications for non-expungible felonies. Unfortunately, unlike the rest of our services that we've talked about, those are not completable on a drop-in basis, that the day of services. So we provide ongoing legal support on those applications. And then we also provide ongoing follow-up legal services for clients on issues that may arise after we file motions of any kind for them. Those could be objections by the DA, being scheduled for court hearings, and more. And that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for your time.
Great. Thank you, Lenny. Questions from commissioners? I see we already have a hand up from Commissioner Freeman.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I do one quick question. You talked about the pilot or your ongoing services. How's that currently being funded?
Yeah, so our pilot project at Coffee Creek is funded through the DOC. We have a small contract with DOC to provide clinics at Coffee Creek, and that, you know, is not expandable to the other locations. Unfortunately, they've said that they don't have funding. Grand Ron is able to pay us for their individual, the sort of pop-up clinics that we've done. So the tribe themselves has paid for us to come out there, but we're really hoping to get investment from the state as opposed to, you know, I know that tribal organizations have different sort of capacity, financial resources and capacity to pay. So we're hoping to be able to expand on those successful pilots that have been very much funded on a sort of pop-up basis.
Thank you for that answer. So just a couple quick comments, and I'll let others speak. So in your presentation, you used some pretty interesting definitions, and I'm not going to go through all of them. One of them, though, I would like to briefly talk about is you multiple times talked about free services. So my guess is your people that are doing this work aren't working for free. So there, another way to say free services in your context is government funded and or taxpayer funded. So I think many of your definitions sort of have that, I'm not going to say misleading, but certainly a way you're presenting it to get to a point that maybe isn't the whole situation. So again, I'm not going to go through all those, but thank you for your presentation. And I would encourage you, if you're successful in this grant, is to let the public know and those receiving the services know who's paying for it on their behalf.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Freeman, and that's excellent, an excellent point. And I think the free point is mostly to highlight the fact that no individuals have to pay for the legal services that we provide to them. But you're absolutely right that folks have the right to know who funds these, and that's something that we do like to make clear to folks, and we'll continue to focus on that, and we'll try to make that more clear in presentations like this. So thanks for that.
I have a follow-up question to Commissioner Freeman's comments about the funding for the project. So can you talk to us about sustainability? Because I think one of the challenges with grants like these is they're for limited duration, and we like to hear how this funding either can leverage additional funding or hear about plans that are in the works to sustain the work beyond just the period of the grant.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I think that's always a concern for projects like ours, is ongoing funding. And it's something that we're always working on. Currently, the majority of our clinics in the Portland area, those that I mentioned earlier, are funded through the Measure 110 money, and I shouldn't call it Measure 110 money anymore, but the cannabis tax funding. And we're part of the Behavioral Health Resource Network, the Indigeneity Burn Behavioral Health Resource Network in Multnomah County. So we're exploring partnerships with other counties to potentially receive burn funding to provide our services, in particular because we see criminal record expungement and legal services of any kind as a really important part of both harm reduction and the pathway to recovery and staying recovered and avoiding falling back into substance use issues. And so that's one potential avenue. Another potential avenue that is newer to me, but is something that we're looking into, is legislative funding. And we also we're in the process of applying for a Meyer grant right now, and I think there are some there's additional hopes for contract, DOC, for example, like we have a small DOC grant right now. I know federal funding is something that you all are probably thinking about too. The federal funding landscape may look a little bit different in the future, but and it's trickle down effects. But our hope too is that DOC might consider in the future, even though they're not able to fund us further right now, but that they might be willing to consider funding us more in the future. Also, I think, our contract with the Grand Ronde Tribe has been great, and our clinics have been very successful there. And so thinking about whether that's something that other tribes might be able to engage in the future on an ongoing basis, if we go there, if we are able to sort of show them that through a project like this one, funded by the CJC, if we can go and show that these are really important and services that can have a lasting impact on folks' lives.
Great, thank you. I just want to share that as a person who has worked with people in reentry for a couple of decades, and a person with a conviction history that is over 30 years old, who a couple of years ago went through the expungement process, that this is both an economic justice issue that really makes a big difference in people's ability to gain living wage jobs. We also know that it reduces recidivism. There are many benefits of people expunging their records who have met all of the statutory requirements for expungement, but because of the cost or the cumbersome nature of the process, have not been able to apply for expungement. So I see this work as being critical to our efforts to create safer communities and create opportunities for people to have full lives and pay taxes and earn decent wages. Are there any other questions or comments for Lainey or Stephanie? Yeah, Commissioner McPherson.
Thank you, Chair Solomon. I just want to echo what Chair Solomon said about how important this work is, and it's and the fact is that when someone shouldn't be held back by maybe something that they've done in the past, and that there needs to be a way to move people forward, and this is a really important way to do so, so that people can be helped. That we can help people move forward and be productive and find success in their life after being justice involved. So it's incredibly important. We simply don't have free civil legal services or free expungement services in our state sufficient for people to be able to access these services. So I just want to thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. It's incredibly important and couldn't be more supportive of it going forward. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right, Carol, do you want to take a roll call for, actually, first, I would entertain a motion. Would someone like to make a motion to approve this grant request from the Clear Clinic?
Yeah, as Commissioner McPherson, I make that motion to approve the grant for the Clear Clinic.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second, Commissioner Beach.
Great. So we have a motion made by Commissioner McPherson, seconded by Commissioner Beach. Carol, if you'd take the roll, please.
Of course. Chair Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
No.
Commissioner McPherson.
Yes.
So then it passes.
All right, thank you. I suspect staff will be in touch with you about next steps, and good luck with your work. We look forward to hearing more about how it progresses.
Thank you all very much.
Yes, thank you for your time.
Have
All
a good
right.
one. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, next up, we're going to hear from Western Oregon University about their investment in future public safety careers. And I believe we have Rico on deck to talk to us.
I sure do. Thank you, Chairman. I am gonna try to figure out, let's see, to get the PowerPoint up. For some reason, it's not popping. Give me one quick second and I'll manage to get it going. Have to do a little bit of Windows juggling.
No pressure.
Are you able to see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. Okay, give me one quick minute. I might need to do it from this formatting right here. So again, good afternoon, Chair Solomon and members of the commission. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Ricardo Lujan Valerio. I am the Director of Government Relations at Western Oregon University and here representing the institution for this project. One of our faculty members, Dr. Melchor Ayala, was unfortunately not able to make it today. He had a last-minute emergency commitment that he was not able to reschedule, but he does send his appreciation to the commission for considering this proposal. Western Oregon is deeply committed to addressing the urgent challenges facing Oregon's public safety workforce. Today, we'll present Western Oregon's Comprehensive Public Safety Program proposal, which is an initiative designed to tackle these challenges by building a skilled, ethical, and diverse workforce equipped to serve our communities today. This program not only responds to immediate staffing shortages, but also lays the groundwork for long-term sustainability and equity in public safety professions. We will explore the program's vision, components, funding strategy, and expected outcomes, while showcasing how this initiative also aligns with the priorities of the Criminal Justice Commission, Western Oregon University as an institution, and the state of Oregon as well. So for understanding the crisis, Oregon is facing a public safety crisis that threatens the effectiveness of our emergency response and in the justice system. Staffing shortages are acute across roles like emergency communications, call centers, law enforcement, and behavioral health services. Rural communities in particular are bearing the burden of this crisis due to limited recruitment opportunities and fewer available resources. The consequences of these shortages are far-reaching. Response times are delayed, existing staff are overburdened with additional capacity needs, and public trust in safety systems continue to erode. This situation demands an innovative solution to build a robust workforce development initiative for public safety professionals equipped by addressing all of these systemic issues. Western Oregon's Comprehensive Public Safety Program is designed to meet that specific need head-on. So the Comprehensive Public Safety Program at Western Oregon University seeks to address this issue through a well-rounded approach. Our goal is to cultivate a workforce that not only addresses the high-level skills of individuals for them to be able to be in this profession, but also the soft skills that are often missing with a lot of individuals coming out of high school, wanting to get that additional experience and perspective in life. Higher education institutions tend to be a pretty good place for them to be able to be exposed to a lot of those things. Coupled with the programming that we have in our criminal justice department, I think we can provide a really good learning environment and experience for future professionals in public safety. This program is anchored in three key pillars: a robust and innovative curriculum, a proactive recruitment focused on equity and inclusion, and a sustainable funding strategy backed by strategic partnerships, both with the state, federal government, local government, and certainly with specifically partnering with agencies, public safety agencies. By housing this program within Western Oregon University's already established criminal justice division, we leverage our expertise in public safety education and extend our impact statewide. So to build a strong foundation, the program focuses again on three main pillars. I've already kind of spoke a little bit on the first two, the curriculum. Right now, we have about 4 main programs that would be ideal for this kind of initiative at Western Oregon University. 2 are at a master's level, and other 2 are at a certificate level. So, in hopes of being able to recreate the wheel, we wouldn't be in that position. We already have a lot of the foundational skills to be able to enhance the curriculum. However, it would be advised through the experiences of partnerships of other agencies with both a urban and rural perspective and lens. into what they really want to see out of professionals coming out of these programs. The second one is in the recruitment. Western Oregon prides itself in being one of the best institutions in the public safety arena and partnering with local and state and federal agencies. We, as being the institution that housed the police academy back in the day, a lot of those roots are very strong still within Western Oregon. That being said, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done to be able to reach a lot of the hard to reach corners of the state. And quite frankly, some of the corners that go beyond the borders of the state of Oregon. And so with this initiative, we're hoping to bolster up that recruitment, be able to touch students and their ambitions, aspirations in the classroom in K through 12, so that they have a better perspective, a more realistic and true perspective of what it means to be in the public safety workforce, beyond just thinking about what they often might see on TV or on the news. Like really giving them a clear sense of the full spectrum of professions in public safety and misspelling a lot of the misinterpretations of what this career could mean for them. Western Oregon provides a little bit more than just those 4 tracks that I mentioned of masters and certificates. There certainly will also be opportunities for a bachelor program for individuals that might be at that level. But we do want to provide, again, that full spectrum of experience for students. Whether you're starting off with a certificate, you want to get your 4-year degree, or want to go into a graduate program, we're really well prepared to be able to bolster that opportunity. And finally, we are committed to a workforce readiness. Students will learn and earn essential certifications while being on the job at the same time. That's really important because the practicum aspect of the programming solidifies the experience and exposure that students need to be workforce ready by the time they graduate. And that kind of experience would go beyond what they're already required to do, whether through the police academy or in other public safety professions, specifically the administrative ones, whether it's a paralegal, a legal assistant, a public safety secretary, that they have that real world experience by the time they leave the classroom and may be employed at an agency. So talking a little bit about the budget, what you're seeing right now on the screen is specifically addressing the budget that we're requesting from the Criminal Justice Commission. But I do want to say that we're right now planning it out to be about a 2 to 3 year program with additional funding being requested to the state legislature. However, just to address this specific grant, we're asking for $250,000 to address a couple different areas of our programming. The first one would be to hire an executive director and cover its fringe benefits so that we're able to have a dedicated staff that can really build this program from the ground up, to really bolster the recruitment aspects, the curriculum development aspects, and the exposure, the national exposure that a lot of our students and faculty and staff can have through this experience. The additional costs for the $250,000 are within travel, so any kind of conferences that are required through this grant for them to be able to attend, and any other learning experiences and professional conferences that both this individual, the executive director, or somebody from their team would be able to travel to. And then the rest are really just for us to be able to continue to meet the supplies and equipment needs of the program, and specifically to the executive director. One that I do want to highlight is the marketing and the consulting aspect. For the consulting aspect, we certainly want to stay within the limits that are required for any kind of consulting. The way that we look at that from our perspective is that our faculty oftentimes go out of contract during the summertime. So summer term, unless you're teaching, you're not on contract for Western Oregon University for the majority of our campuses. We would like to keep some of those faculty potentially on contract so that they can help us continue to develop the curriculum or be able to plan out what the next academic year will look like. So it really is embedded to work in conjunction with what's currently existing, but amplifying it to a degree, to the next degree that would help develop more professionals in this space. So one area that I do want to talk about is just reassurance and compliance. We have a pretty robust General Counsel office at Western Oregon University, and a lot of professionals that work with federal grants across the board. We certainly are keeping in mind the necessities of separating the ambitions of the program with what are requirements of federal grants and what we're wanting to do with state potential funding. There will be elements in our ultimate budget that speak on scholarships for students that might not be able to afford a practicum experience if it weren't for them leaving their current job to potentially tuition assistance. Some of these areas would not be eligible for the funding that we're requesting today, but our ambition is to get funding from the legislature in 2025 that ultimately will bolster the ability for us to be able to have a fully implementable program by the beginning of the next academic year in fall of 2025. With that in mind, that we do seek a pretty significant expansion of recruitment and retention of students with about 50 students for the first year and scaling up to 100 students for the following year. There's already students within the program. Like I mentioned, this is not a completely new program for Western Oregon University, but we want to make sure that the folks that are being recruited and enrolling at Western Oregon University under this program are specifically catered to by the resources that we're creating today. And so we will be separating these cohorts a little bit separately, accounting for them a little bit separately. And so our goal would be to add an additional 50 students by year one with 100 by year two, and then be able to build on from there on. Again, long-term goals for us, building that diverse workforce. So we want to get those hard-to-reach counties, hard-to-reach rural communities, hard-to-reach underrepresented communities in public safety, and give them the ability, the opportunity to get an education in these professions where we really want to bolster their exposure to. Strengthen that trust. Again, it doesn't mean just putting out a flyer out to the students or providing a video online that they can look at. But what would it mean for that executive director to go to the classroom on a Tuesday and talk to that 9th grader, 10th grader, and let them know this is what's available to you out there. This is what a starting salary could look like in an office at a district attorney's office or a public defender's office, or this is what a parole officer makes as a starting salary. Being able to really introduce them to these concepts early on so that they start seeing themselves in these futures. That's the kind of outreach we really want to create that it's currently non-existent in many of our institutions here in Oregon. And then again, establish those sustainable partnerships with agencies. Ideally, when an agency is able to identify a potential candidate for a vacant position, whether again that be a sworn-in officer to an administrator, front desk, a public service provider, that they're able to give them the opportunity to be able to gain the skills that they need to be successful in that space. So in these partnerships, what could the employer also do on their end to allow this academic availability come to fruition for them? So hopefully that can also come in ways of tuition assistance, but at the very least, flexibility and integration of what is expected to them of them as employees of this agency with their goal, whether that be a 2-year to a 4 or 6-year experience at our institution. So again, just to close it off, for the securing our funding, we want to start off with this $250,000 as kind of like a seed fund for us to be able to then be successful in advocating for additional funding in the 2025 legislative session. We do have a legislative champion at this moment so that we can address a lot of these gaps that we're seeing in public safety. We're leaning heavily on the governor's recommended budget, where there was a note that there needs to be a bolstered effort in recruitment, retention, and training of public safety professionals. And it aligns with the Secretary of State's office audit on workforce readiness for the state that was published earlier this year. We want to launch the recruitment efforts pretty quickly if we're able to get the funding for that executive director to start off the work as soon as possible so that we're ready to go, ready for prime time by September of 2025, which is the beginning of fall term for our public universities. By that time, we would already start again enhancing our curriculum that's already existing out of Western Oregon and have that inaugural cohort launch for that fall of 2025. So with that, again, I thank you for your time. And I'm available for any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you for the presentation. I've got a quick question and I'll open it up to commissioners. So it sounds like you're prepared to launch in fall. Is that independent of getting the state funding? So if state funding doesn't come through, you still would have the ability to launch and begin the program?
That's correct. From our position right now, Commissioner, we are we are ready to launch in that the program is already existing. Many of the functions of the program are already existing within our criminal justice division. There are just additional elements that we're just not able to put into place at the moment without additional capacity for us to make the case during the session. And so if we're able, just as an example, let's say we get the money tomorrow, which I know it's not that fast, but let's say we get the money tomorrow, we would implement it immediately so that when we're having conversations with the legislature in real time in 2025, by the time that we get to June, they already see some work in progress. They can already see some tangibles of how that additional investment that would come out of the session would be put to use. And the ultimate goal here really is that by 2027, this pilot program would have 2 years of a lifespan so that we're able to expand this to all 7 public universities, potentially even our community colleges as well, and say, hey, what is the full higher education network? What do they have to do for us to be able to make this a reality across every corner in the state of Oregon? Again, we feel like we're a natural initial partner because of the roots that we have in public safety as an institution in Oregon, but we certainly want to see this come to fruition across the state with our other higher education partners.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Freeman.
So I want to start by thanking you of thinking of doing this. Douglas County, I'm a Douglas County Commissioner. We recruit and hire many different public safety professionals and have a heck of a time recruiting and finding good folks across the board. So I very much like your program and what you're trying to accomplish. I had a question really around the numbers and the timing. So you've got a grant request for $250,000. You're talking about going to the legislature. Is the $250,000 an annual number? Is it for the first 6 months of next calendar year to the legislature funds, or how does that timing look to you?
That's a really good question, Commissioner Freeman. So the $250,000 would in fact have to be spent down by September of the next year. We feel fairly comfortable that we'll be able to do that because, again, the purpose of these $250,000 is to start making and laying the groundwork of what that larger investment from the state will be focused on. And so the number that we currently have as a request to the legislature is $1 million for the biennium. That obviously would be spread out into different chunks for each year. So the first year budget would be around $750,000, including both of those funds. But these funds specifically would be spent down and would have to be spent down by September of this upcoming year.
Do you have any follow-ups, Commissioner Freeman?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand. So it's your anticipation, if you receive this grant, to spend that money in about 9 months?
That's
I mean,
correct.
you're not gonna hire somebody tomorrow. So best case scenario is you got somebody sort of in the hopper, you get them started by January, that only gives you 9 months. So that number is like a 9-month sort of projection of costs.
That's correct, Commissioner. And I think the beauty of our program and the fact that we do have a lot of wonderful faculty and staff professionals in our criminal justice division is that we can really ramp this up to take effect as soon as possible and as soon as we're able to see funding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have.
Great. Any other questions or comments? All right. Well, I also want to echo Commissioner Freeman's support for this. I think we need to do more to create opportunities for well-rounded, educated law enforcement professionals with an eye toward looking at how we can bolster up rural parts of the state. I think, a lot of larger cities have their own training programs that are more robust that don't exist in rural parts of Oregon. So I also applaud your efforts and am supportive of this grant. If there are no other questions, I will open it up for a motion.
This is Freeman. I'd be happy to make the motion to approve the grant.
All right. Is there a second?
I'll second it. Commissioner Beach?
Great. We have a motion made by Commissioner Freeman, seconded by Commissioner Beach. Carol, would you take the roll, please?
I'd be happy to. Chair Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson.
Yes.
Then it passes.
Great. Like our previous presenter, I look forward to hearing how the rollout goes as well as your efforts with the legislature. So please keep us posted.
Will do, Chair, and thank you everyone for your support.
You bet. All right. Next up, we have an award decision on the RJ Restorative Justice Competitive Grant that Rima, I believe, is going to present on.
Yep, good afternoon. Give me just a moment and I will pull up my presentation. It should be loading. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Excellent. Yes, so good afternoon, Chair Solomon, commissioners. For the record, I'm Rima Atung, staff at CJC, and as Chair mentioned, today I'm going to be asking you all to review and approve funding recommendations for the Restorative Justice Grant Program. So as I am sure you are aware by now, the RJ Grant Program was established in 2021 with an initial $4 million appropriated for the program. In 2024 through HB 5204, an additional $4 million was appropriated for the 2023-2025 biennium. Of that $4 million, about $2.7 million was allocated to existing programs to maintain their current operations, including bringing programs into full pilot or operation. And the remaining about $1.3 million was put out to be awarded through a competitive solicitation that had two distinct types of funding available. One was for those existing grantees to further build capacity of their programs, and then another avenue for funding was for new grantees to conduct planning grants or planning projects to plan for new RJ programs throughout the state. So at this point in time, we've completed that solicitation. We reviewed all the applications. Staff did our review, and then we also met with the Grant Advisory Committee, and they provided their recommendations on who to award, which applications to award through that process. So today, your role is to authorize those funding decisions recommended by the GAC. So as I mentioned, that solicitation included two distinct purposes. One was for current grantees for supplemental funds for capacity building, and the other one was a completely separate kind of pool of applicants, which were organizations that had not been funded by RJ previously to create a plan of action to implement new RJ programs and to help further spread RJ across the state. The project period, since these are 2023-25 biennium funds, is pretty short. We're running up against the end of the biennium. So for those funds, the project period is January 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2025. So only 6 months total. We were pleased to see we got a lot more interest in the solicitation than we anticipated. We actually received 16 applications. So first, I kind of want to briefly talk through what the Grant Advisory Committee review process was, and then we'll get it a little more in detail about those applications that we received. The Grant Advisory Committee did a very detailed and exhaustive review. The RJ program includes a whole list of different requirements, preferences, and then there's also RFGP criteria on top of that we needed to consider. So this slide kind of very briefly summarizes all those different components that we went through. The actual review, all the different criteria took up like 6 slides. So just to give you an idea of the process. And it should be noted that, you know, with all of these different purposes and requirements that they went through, such as just basic eligibility, whether or not the applicant was new or a current grantee, you know, whether or not the program component that was proposed met the definition of restorative justice, all these different criteria. The GAC worked very diligently to ensure that they were all applied consistently across all the applications. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Nope.
RFGP, is that restorative funding?
Oh, sorry,
What's
request
the
for grant
Request for grant
proposal.
proposals? Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
All good.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, 16 agencies applied for funding. 6 of our 7 current restorative justice grantees applied for those supplementary funds to further build capacity of their existing programs. And we also received 10 applications from new agencies applying for those planning funds. The total ask for all of those 16 applicants was about $1.3 million. So it's actually a little less than what was available. So the GAC did have a little bit of more flexibility in making funding decisions than we sometimes have when we're actually over the amount available. And because of this, and because of that extensive list of requirements and criteria that I mentioned previously, the GAC actually authorized CJC staff to work with the eligible applicants to do the more detailed budget analysis that we sometimes do during those meetings to identify unallowable costs. So they authorized us to do that separately after the GAC meeting, and we'll get into what that means a little bit more. Of those 16 applicants, 2 of them, REAP and Restorative Roots, were determined to be ineligible to fund through this particular solicitation. The remaining 14, as I said, there were some questions that arose about different aspects of their programs and different items in their budgets that staff followed up on, but they were determined to be eligible to be funded. So that brings us to the recommendations themselves. And I apologize for this teeny tiny writing in the middle of the slide there. So of those 14 applicants, 8 were approved for funding up to the total amount requested for the full 6-month period. 4 of the applicants, Bridge Pamoja, Latino Network, Medicine Wheel Recovery Services, and Transformative Justice Community, were approved for funding with additional funding contingent on each applicant meeting these requirements that are in the teeny writing here, which include conducting a review of the proposed planning project to ensure all program components and activities comply with grant purposes and requirements, and then reviewing the requested budget to ensure all costs align with the purposes and requirements as well. And so for those 4 applicants, what they were approved for was provisional funding, which means they would receive 50% of the total requested amount for the initial 3 months of the project period, which would be from January 1st to March 31st, 2025. And they would need to, reapply and demonstrate their compliance with those 2 above requirements to get approved for the remaining 50% of the funds to support the final 3 months of their program. So, for 8 applicants, the GAC determined that they were, appropriate projects and were approved for funding without any stipulations. And then for those 4 additional applicants, 10 applicants, they were approved for funding up to the total amount. And for 4 applicants, they were approved for provisional funding. There's a typo there. That should say 10 on that first bullet, and I apologize. Any questions about that? Oh, all right. So here is a slightly revised version of the funding table that you received in the memo that also provided the information on this grant program and the applications. The highlighted applicants here have slightly different amounts than were in the memo because we are, as I mentioned, going through that process of finalizing those budgets. So they took out, some of those small unallowable items so that the amounts differ by a couple $1,000s in most cases. I do want to also note that the applicants approved or recommended for provisional funds are identified here with asterisks. And as I noted previously, what that means is when you're looking at this funding table, they would be receiving half of the amount listed here for those initial 3 months, and then the remaining up to the remaining half for the final 3 months of the project period. Any questions or comments before we move on to the motion language? No. All right. So here are some potential motion language that we included for approving those recommendations by the GAC to provisionally fund the 4 applications for those 4 applicants, and then to fully fund the applications for the remaining 10 applicants shown in the funding table.
All right. Are you ready for us to make a motion or ask any questions?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. I see Commissioner Beach has her hand up.
Oh, I believe your microphone is not on, Commissioner Beach.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you, Chair. I'll start over. Just a curiosity, the 2 applications that were deemed ineligible, and I know we're really insufficient on time. I was just curious if the Grant Review Committee reached out to those to discuss ways in which perhaps they could become eligible.
So for those 2 programs, the process that we went through is during the staff review, we reached out to any of the applicants that we had questions, large substantial questions about whether or not the program fit under this funding stream, to all of the applicants that had those questions, including those 2. And then based on those responses, the GAC then determined whether the applicants were eligible or ineligible. So, some of those other applicants that we reached out to with those big substantial questions in the beginning were later recommended for provisional funding. But the 2 that were determined to be ineligible, the discussion was that they were just too far from the requirements and purposes of the grant to really fit.
Great, thank you. And one additional question probably for the Criminal Justice Commission staff. Do we know, or are we pretty confident that this grant funds will continue through the next biennium?
So the restorative justice funds were included in the governor's budget that was published on Monday. Beyond that, we don't know, but it passed muster that far at least.
Great, thank you. I still need to dig into that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I do want to note for the planning grants, some did include, even in their initial application, plans to seek other funding sources to be sustainable, even if there weren't additional funds through RJ. So it seemed like some folks at least were thinking about that as well.
I appreciate that. And I like hearing that there's a practice and reaching out to different folks, because sometimes it's just that technical assistance that a certain application needs to make them eligible, or, you know, allow them provisional awards. So I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. That's all I have, Chair.
Oh, Chair Solomon, I think your microphone is now off.
Sorry about that. I asked, are there any other questions before we move on to the motion? Commissioner McPherson.
Thank you, Chair. Not a question, but I do have to declare a potential conflict. We have 228 people at MPD. I believe one employee gets a portion of her funding is through CJC RJ funding. So I'm extremely supportive of the program and this, but I cannot vote.
So given that we're funding a number of programs, you could declare a potential conflict on that specific program, and I believe vote on the rest has been common practice.
Understood. I unfortunately am not certain of the specific program. I put a text into the individual to get an answer, and I haven't heard back. So I'm sorry, but
No problem.
okay.
All right. Is there someone who'd be willing to make a motion to provisionally fund the applications for Bridge Pomoja, Latino Network, Medicine Wheel Recovery Services, and Transformative Justice Community for the amount listed in the recommended funding table?
So moved. Commissioner Beach?
This
Is there a
is Freeman,
second?
I'll second.
Great. Motion made by Commissioner Beach, seconded by Commissioner Freeman. Carol, would you please take roll?
I'd be happy to. Chair Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson.
Abstain.
So then it passes.
Great. And would someone be willing to make a motion to fund the applications of the Restorative Justice Grant Program Supplemental and Planning Funds for the 10 applicants approved for funding by the GAC up to the amount shown in the recommended funding table?
This is Freeman. I'll make that motion.
Great. Is there a second?
And I will second. Commissioner Beach?
All right. Motion made by Commissioner Freeman, seconded by Commissioner Beach. Roll call, please.
Chair Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson.
Abstain.
So then it passes.
Great. All right. Thank you for the presentation, Rima.
Yep, thank you very much.
Okay, Ryan, I believe you're going to talk to us about a JRI grant adjustment for Marion County.
That's correct. Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. My slide's going. I hope my volume's a little better today than before. No? Okay, I'm told it is better from the people who clearly don't know. Who always say they know.
It's not too bad right now, but when you started out, it was a little low.
Okay, all right. Okay, so quick confirmation. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
But as you mentioned, Chair, I am here before you again today with an adjustment request for the Justice Reinvestment Grant Program. This request is from Marion County. This request is a result of programmatic shifts within the county, predominantly driven by a recent decision, or a decision as of August, in Marion County to close their transition center. The transition center housed 2 JRP funded programs, and so as a result of closing the transition center, they need to make adjustments to programming under Justice Reinvestment. Also want to note that should you have questions specific to the county, we do have Mike Hartford from their Community Corrections Division online. And so the program that they are aiming to fund moving forward is what they're calling a stabilization mentor program. This program is designed to provide wraparound services to individuals on supervision, both in custody or in the community. And it's described as a mobile resource center. So the idea being that the mentors funded by this shift would be mobile and able to meet clients where they are at, to provide a variety of different services to them, whether it be basic needs assistance, connection to treatment, recovery, or other resources, as well as group cognitive behavioral groups and other services. They would fund this new program by way of transition of some of these other programs that have changed as a result of the transition center. So there was a deputy position assigned to the transition center. That position is moving. That position is moving inside of the facility along with the program, therefore freeing up those position funds because they'll be covered by other county resources. There's also some institutional supplies, janitorial supplies and the like that are now freed up as a result of the closure of the transition center. The other program that was previously funded by Justice Reinvestment, the Resource Center, that contract has been terminated as a result of this move or this change. And so those funds are also now made available within the Marion County's Justice Reinvestment budget. So they would take the ask is to move $206,000 to support this new stabilization mentor program. The second part of the request is to move the remaining available funds of $80,000 to adjust for or address some calculations or undercalculated costs associated with a previously approved parole officer, probation officer in their prison diversion program. So that position had initially, back in 2023, had been projected at a cost of a salary. The person now in that position is at a higher level of salary, as well as there's been cost of living increases to that position since that time. So the second part of the request is to transition that money, again, that is made available as a result of the change to the transition center deputy position that no longer is funded by Justice Reinvestment, and putting this portion to the existing prison diversion probation officer. And so with that, I will turn it over to you all with any questions.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Any questions from commissioners?
This is Freeman. If you're ready for a motion, I'll make it.
Great. Hearing no questions. Yes, please.
I move to approve the request.
Do you need more detail in the motion, Ryan? Is that clear enough for you?
That's
Great.
sufficient. Thank you.
Super. Motion made by Commissioner Freeman. Is there a second?
I'll second. Commissioner Beach?
All right, Carol, roll call, please.
Chair Solomon,
Yes.
Commissioner Beach,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman,
Yes.
Commissioner McPherson,
Yes.
then it passes.
Great. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right. Looks like we might actually get out of here a little ahead of schedule. We still have agency updates from Ken. And also, I realize I failed at the beginning of the meeting to ask if we had anybody that was wanting to make public comment. Carol, did we have anybody sign up for public comment?
I did not receive any.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, Director Sanchagrin.
Thank you, Chair. Just one brief update for the Commission today. As has already been discussed very briefly in one of our previous presentations, the Governor's recommended budget was released on Monday morning around 11 o'clock. And I just want to give a quick rundown of the recommendations that were put forward in that budget for the Commission. As you all are acutely aware of, over the last few biennia, and legislative sessions, the commission has increasingly been given a lot of work to do, and in some cases only given limited duration positions to do that work. We have also been gifted with grant programs that do not necessarily have consistent funding. Because of those two factors, we made a significant number of asks through the governor's budget process, and I'm pleased to inform you that many of those asks were included in the final budget that were released on Monday. So briefly, in a rundown of those items, first, we do have 4 limited duration positions given to us for various grant programs that were set to phase out at the end of this biennium. They were recommended for inclusion in our budget moving forward so that we can maintain this customer service level that we have established here at CJC. In addition to that, with regards to specific grant programs, the programs that were included beyond our normal CSL, which primarily includes our illegal marijuana market enforcement grant, justice reinvestment, and specialty courts. The packages that were recommended for funding beyond that were, as discussed earlier, $4 million for restorative justice. But then in addition to that, $40 million for deflection programming. That's a little bit lower than what we had requested in our agency request budget. However, we still think that's a robust amount that will allow us to fund all of our current programs for a full 2-year biennial cycle. $15 million in additional funding for our jail medication treatment grant, and then also $10 million for the Justice Reinvestment Equity Program that is administered by the Northwest Health Foundation. So all in all, the recommendations put forward in the GRB were very strong. That will allow me to go and advocate very strongly to Ways and Means and to the Public Safety Sub for all of those programs when it comes time, hopefully in January or early February. So I'm happy to take any questions. You'll be seeing a lot more from me as we move into legislative session. When we have our January meeting, we'll be running down all of the various legislative items that may impact CJC once those bills drop. So I'm happy to take any questions. And if there's none, I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday season as we move towards Christmas. And I see Commissioner Freeman.
Yep.
Just wanted to congratulate you for getting your asks in the governor's budget. I once served in the legislature and sat on the Public Safety Subcommittee and Full Ways and Means. And as you know, the first step is certainly getting in the governor's recommended budget, but the work between now and getting across the finish line cannot be overstated. You got a lot of work to do to get in the final legislatively approved budget is the goal. So congratulations so far.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, at least I take it as a good sign so far. I agree. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Looks like my camera just went out for Director Sanchikun. Well, I will echo those comments. Thanks for sharing the mostly good news about the budget. I am still hopeful that deflection will come in at the higher amount, but we'll see where we go. If there are no other questions or comments, I think we will adjourn, and thank you all for your time.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yep. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.